Hej och välkommen till Vardagsprepping, en helt ideell podcast för dig som vill stärka din beredskap och kul samtidigt. Idag har jag en jättespännande gäst och vi ska prata engelska, så jag börjar med det på en gång. Lee, welcome to Vardagsprepping.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, of course. I just quickly wanted to introduce our concept to you, so you know where we're coming from. So vardagsprepping is roughly translated into everyday prepping.
Yeah.
So our goal is are two things. It's to make unprepared people become more prepared.
Yeah.
And then the ones that have taken the step to be preppers, that they know how to escalate their prepping without it, focusing on bunkers and guns and ammo and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we want to integrate prepping into the lives of Swedish people.
Yeah.
So that's our mission. And as you know, I don't know, you'll get to talk about your company as well. But if I did my research correctly, I think you're based in Poland.
No, I mean, the warehouse, we've got a warehouse that does some of our logistics in Poland. But
okay.
The company's, it's Hydro Wind Energy, and we're actually, the holding company's based out of the US.
Okay.
But a lot of the manufacturing we do is actually in China. It's just when you talk about molds and manufacturing, they are the capital manufacturing base of the world.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, but when we talk about prepping in Europe, it's quite often that you reach a country where they have the sea, very close to them, and it's undrinkable water.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to have you here to talk about your company and also the product Quenchsea. I hope I pronounced that right.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, Quenchsea.
Yeah,
that's right.
So tell me about your mission, because you're not only converting seawater into fresh water. Your company is doing a lot of other good things.
Yeah. Well, the core, we're actually a startup. We've been operating for a few years, and the essence of what we do revolves around energy and water. We're actually developing a disruptive technology that harnesses wind offshore in deep waters, combined with mechanical-based storage. The same technology can also be used for seawater desalination at scale. So that is really ultimately the core of what we do. But in addition to that, we've also launched Quenchsea, which is a handheld, manually operated device that turns seawater into fresh water. And the idea is a low-cost unit, because there are units that are available that were developed maybe 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago, that are used by the military and for other offshore sectors, but it's very expensive. So the idea was to have something that is low cost, that's accessible, that also has low cost membrane. So we kind of developed Quenchsea, and we launched the first version, and then the second version, which we're currently phasing out. And we're in the pre-launch phase of the third version, which would be the most efficient unit to date.
That's really nice. And I think you have some humanitarian goal as well.
Ultimately, I think one of the big challenges globally is there's a water crisis, that's impacting over 2.2 billion people around the world. So the idea was to develop a unit that we could, that is, again, low cost, very stressing that point, to make it accessible to people that don't have access to clean water, and if they're living next to the ocean. Because there's a lot of the big urban areas, a lot of them are actually based on the ocean, but obviously they can't, there's, water everywhere, but they can't drink it because it's seawater. So the idea was to kind of develop something that empowers individuals to desalinate seawater for themselves, on a small scale. So the essence also was around the humanitarian, but obviously we knew there would be a market also for, sailors, for preppers, because again, preppers, if you look at some of the, which you probably would tell us more about, that one of the first things you want to do in a survival in a survival circumstances is you need access to fresh water. So we knew that was also going to be a big market for us.
I mean, we in our work is not only a podcast, but we also have a YouTube channel where we try out things and for reviews for our followers. So I think this summer we actually did a lot of water filtration tests. And that's also very good because we have, as you said, it's not just that we need fresh water; we need it to be clean as well.
Yes.
And that's so that's why because I live in the Stockholm area, and actually the first review I ever did was with a life straw, if you know them.
Yes.
Yeah. But I did that with brackish water, which it doesn't help.
It doesn't help.
No.
That is,
and that. Yeah. No, go ahead, please.
That's also another problem. The brackish water, because brackish water is like salty. It's up to around 10,000 total dissolved solids. That's how they measure the amount of minerals in it. So it's still got a significant amount of salts that you can't really drink. I mean, drinkable water is really below. You can go up to about 1,500, which is still kind of drinkable, but you can start tasting the minerals in it and the salts. But ideally, it should be below 1,500. And to be normal, you want really to be drinking water with around 200, 300 total dissolved solids. If you look at seawater, it's really around above 32,000 total dissolved solids. It's just a way to measure how much minerals there are. But brackish water has definitely been a challenge. We're actually because some people as well, people that are living also in countries where sometimes they dig. Where did you get the water from, by the way? Because you said it was brackish. So where ultimately did you get that from?
Yeah, so this was in a big, I don't know what you call it. It's
a borehole.
No, this is a big lake, but it's open, so it goes into the Baltic Sea. So it mixes. I think it mixes fresh with salt water.
Because we know that it's a big challenge as well globally. So seawater is the most difficult thing to desalinate because it's the most energy intensive. The next most difficult thing to do is brackish water. So we're probably also going to be launching a cheaper version as well for brackish water, because it just needs instead of needing, say, 55 bars for the desalination to happen, which is the pressure, because it's it ultimately Quenchsea uses a reverse osmosis membrane, so it requires pressurized seawater to filter or to desalinate it. And brackish water would only require around 15 bars to kind of turn it into fresh water, but it uses slightly different membranes. So if we use, you can use even Quenchsea, the new version 3.0 for brackish water, but you have to be very careful that you don't completely demineralize the water. Because if you demineralize the water, it's distilled water, so it's very funny, it has a very funny taste to it. And it can be also a little bit corrosive. So it's better to, but you can easily, remineralize that if you just add a bit of say seawater or brackish water to it to give it a palatable taste. But it is a major challenge.
So, can you explain, because in the prepping community, talking about because I think I read somewhere that the amount of fresh water in the world is like 1% of all the water. And that's always been a challenge for everyone that needs to drink water. How do we? And I've seen projects online where you do this. Where you heat up the water and it goes into this copper spiral and then steam. So we were actually thinking about doing that project, but it seems it seems like it's not very efficient.
Yeah, but it's, I mean, that's another way. I mean, one of the ways to clean water is distilling it, or even if to desalinate seawater is actually distilling it. And you can heat it up and then, collect the condensed water, collect it, evaporates, and then it gets condensed, and then you collect it into droplets. It is, but it's inefficient. You can, we were even at one point we were actually exploring doing that with a solar, like a solar still, an advanced solar still that reflects with a concentrated solar power to reflect it, and then so you can actually evaporate it. So we probably might launch, depending on what we had, but it was quite inefficient. It's not, but it is still, it's a good way of doing it. If you have dirty water, that is probably one of the best ways to do it. But you can also do it with one of those ultrafiltration, cartridges, a bit like the one you're talking about, Life Straw, but not obviously to remove salt, but to remove, viruses, pathogens, and the rest. But even Quenchsea now, we also have a pre-filtration, because the aura membranes are very sensitive, so that over time they get clogged. And what we've done is have a pre-filtration to really clean the seawater, so it's almost very pure seawater, that before it hits the aura membrane inside the actual device. So it helps prolong the membrane. And you can potentially, like I said, use it for brackish water, but our advice is really that it's better to use it solely for seawater.
But that brings me to a question. So the Baltic Sea, would that be considered brackish, or is it seawater in your view?
Well,
because it has,
I mean, the Baltic Sea is, I can't remember what the TDS level is, but I think it'd be worth just checking what the Baltic Sea is. But I think it's around the 20,000 TDS mark. But then, if it's 20,000, you can use it. Even with 10,000, you can, but you've just got to be very careful not to, if it's completely demineralized. What we do is, as well, we recommend having what they call a TDS pen reader. So, you put the pen inside water, and then it just gives you an idea of the amount of minerals that are in. It just gives you a figure. So anything below 1,000, it's fine to drink. Anything that goes, say, below 5 TDS, then it's completely mineralized. So you'd probably need to remineralize it, which is very simple. You just maybe take a small bit of the Baltic Sea again and put it into the desalinated water, and then you'll be able to drink it, and it should be fine. You can still measure it, but we would recommend having a TDS pen.
Yeah, I saw you had that on in your store as well. But for people, because our followers have been, we've been talking about water filtration systems, so they know about the filters and the process. But can you just walk us through in a very high level what you've talked about it a bit, but what happens? How does Quenchsea work? And what is reverse osmosis?
Well, reverse osmosis, to start, I think that's a good question, is just a way that uses reverse osmosis. I think we've all done biology, at some stage in our lives. Was just a way that I think plants generally kind of use reverse osmosis for water absorption. And what they do is these filters, which are already commercialized and being used in large-scale desalination plants, they use reverse osmosis. But ultimately, reverse osmosis requires high pressures. So what we have done is we've kind of miniaturized what happens in large-scale desalination plants into a small handheld device. And what ultimately, it's a manual device. So as you're pumping it, you're actually building the pressure to up to 55 bars. And that's ultimately, it requires over about 40 bars for the reverse osmosis process to start. So the way the actual system works is you're manually pumping it. So you're sucking seawater in, which is being pre-filtered first through a pre-filtered cartridge. So there's a coarse filter and then a full ultrafiltration, which actually removes like I said earlier, the majority of 99.9% of all pathogens and viruses and everything out of the water. It's very clean seawater. It goes through the tubes, and then as you're pumping it, you're actually pressurizing that seawater through a reverse osmosis membrane, which filters it into fresh water. So what the membrane does is actually remove the majority of the salts, and it only leaves just a little bit to ensure that it is palatable to taste and to drink.
Okay. Sounds easy.
Yeah, it's the challenge is that it's a hydraulic system that that builds up pressure. That's quite high pressure. I mean, if you think of one of the first prototypes that we actually developed was we actually used a car jack. Just the hydraulic car jacks. The bottle car jacks. So we've got images of testing the first with the reverse osmosis, really small reverse osmosis membrane. And we were kind of successful in removing the salts. So it's ultimately a hydraulic system that builds pressure up to 55 bars. And there's one where you get the fresh water, and then one where you get what they call the reject brine. So you have input seawater, and then you have also very, very salty water going out. And then one outlet is where the fresh water goes.
Okay, because you talked about the membranes being stuffed with, but that was the particles, not the salt. It's not the salt that. Sorry, I don't find the words right now. But the membranes, you talked about those being clogged. And that was not.
Yeah, after a while, with reverse osmosis, over time, the membranes get clogged. So they don't live forever. But the idea is we've tried to also minimize the maintenance of these membranes, so it doesn't, because normally you'd have to put it into kind of a preservative. But what we've done is, because they're so low cost, they can easily be replaced. So normally they're very expensive, but at the moment they're only $30 each, so it's kind of reasonable. We always recommend having a couple of them just in case something happens or they get clogged. But over time they will get clogged. We always get the question of how long? What's the lifeline of the life of these membranes? And we've tested them very aggressively. But we just say that you're probably going to get around 500 liters of water from each membrane. It could be much more. It could be a little bit less, depending also, because seawater is not created equally. So, if you're, like you said, in the Baltic Sea, you might be getting 20,000 TDS. If you're, for example, in the Arabian Gulf, you're getting close to 50,000 TDS. So it is, that also has an impact on the life of the membrane.
Yeah. I'm just checking the TDS for Baltic Sea.
Yeah, I remember seeing something like 20,000, but you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I don't. Let's see. They talk the per mil instead.
Yeah, what does it say? It'd be nice to see.
2.4. So it goes between 2% up to 10, or not percent, 2 per mil to 10 per mil.
Which I believe is which is from 2,000 to 10,000, I think, if that's correct, or is it 20,000 to? I've got to check. I always work in TDS, so I've got to find a way to convert it. Yeah. But it should be. But what we'll do, Martin, I mean, once because we're in the pre-launch phase, we'll actually send you one as well, so you could test it yourself, and then you can kind of create a video out of it. I think that always helps.
Yeah, I would love to. So that also, so I'm just approaching your product from the same approach that I have with water filters. So one thing that stood out to me was that it, and I'm putting quote marks, 1 liter per 10 minutes. So that's kind of slow for a water filter. But now, since we know the process that you described to us, it's kind of, it's quite good actually for something that's manually work.
Yeah. That's about, so it's actually more than that. So the Quenchsea 3.0, the one that we've got on Kickstarter now, so that is over 8 liters per hour. So it's a little bit above, than 1 liter per 10 minutes, which is like, I mean, in a survival situation, you probably, but remember, this is a manual device. So if you wanted 8 liters above, you would be pumping it for an hour. So it's not like that, but we've made it also very easy to pump. So it's not too much of an effort to pump, which again, so even a child could potentially do it, or an elderly person. They wouldn't struggle with pumping it.
Yeah, because that was also a question I had when I looked into the specs, and I was looking at the version 2 on your website. So one question was, is it continuous manual labor? But I think you answered that. You constantly would be cranking it or pumping it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I see a long YouTube video in front of me.
Oh, yeah.
Me pumping
I
out
guess
1
you can,
liter.
I mean, you can kind of cut it out. It is an exciting, exciting development, because we've been working on this now for 3 years. So, and we've got to this point now. And like I said, we've had a really good reception in terms of, survivalist, the community, especially in the US, because I think the US is the prepper community are much more kind of like they're ahead of everyone else. They have different scenarios for everything. And I think people, because of the geopolitical situation now globally, I think more and more people are saying, you know what, maybe we should have something that kind of just in case something happens, that we can actually have something as a desalinator, and we want to make it accessible. So that's the idea that we launched as well. But initially, like I said, it was for the humanitarian, but obviously, so many different user cases.
And I was just joking. I mean, I think this is wizardry. I think this is awesome to be able to actually create fresh water from salt water, because that's, as you said, this has not been for the individuals in the society. This has been like military or factories, basically. So I'm amazed about this product. So and I'm sorry, I'm going back to one of the things that you brushed upon. You said, because one of the things we also like to talk about in our community in prepping is the storage. So the shelf life. So do your the membranes and the filters, do they require priming or something, or is it just to plug in and start pumping?
Yeah, we've actually simplified that. So very minimal maintenance. So you can actually use it, and then after you've used it, you need to drain the water out. You can wash the membrane with fresh water, but you do not have to put it into any preservatives or anything like that. Okay. You can keep it as it is, and then use it again. But every time you use it, you really need to flush the membrane out for about 5 minutes. So you shouldn't drink any water for 5 minutes every time you use it. So if you use it today and then for an hour today, and then you use it tomorrow, before you use it tomorrow or collect the water, you should, the first 5 minutes, collect the water and throw it away, and then you can start using it. If if you're going to keep it for a long time without using it, we always recommend using new membranes. Because the membranes are really cheap. So, it's, like I said, the aim was to have something, really low cost. That's not going to be a burden for someone to change. So you're not thinking about a $300-400 membrane. We're talking about $30, which is reasonable.
And I think a good thing also, I think you sell them in packs of 2, right? So you always have 2.
We sell them in pairs, because it just wouldn't be worth like selling one and then you're paying the shipping. So it just made sense to kind of combine them in pairs and send them. And we do also that for the filters as well, because again, they're quite low cost.
But if I would buy some extra filters and put on a shelf, how long can I use them? In 10 years? Or do they have a best before date?
Yeah, they should work. Yeah, they should. Yeah. They don't actually. We don't. We haven't obviously tested them, but as far as we know, of course, when working with the manufacturers, they should still work fine. Yeah. So we say shelf life 5 years. So it should be fine. But then it, to be on the safe side, and they are already kind of contained in a little plastic pouch. But shouldn't. And we use what they call dry aura membranes. So there's other membranes that are made that have to be wet all the time. But no, this one can be dry. It's fine.
That's great. That's great. And also, let's see. I had a question about why freshwater is not feasible to use, but I think you answered that question.
Yeah.
And you said it was easy to maintain. Yes. So, we've been talking about, or you have been talking about the version 3. Could you please just let us know about the Kickstarter project? Because I think that's kind of important, at least for you, and also for early adopters to get hold of the new version.
Yeah, so you'll find us on Kickstarter under Quenchsea, but I don't know if you are going to be sharing the. There's a link that we can share as well, and there we've only got another, because this is a pre-launch, so you order it now, and then because it's like a crowdfunding campaign, it helps us with our cash flow. Remember, we're not a massive company; we're going through a funding round. And then what we do is we go do the molds, we produce them, manufacture them, and then ship them to backers around April, May 2025. But because they're helping us now, they get a discounted rate. So, initially, the final price of what we're going to launch at, we haven't really fully decided. But at the moment, you can get yours for around $250 if you go for early birds, $250 US. And if it's late in the campaign, it's around $300. But we can share the link with you, and then people can support us, because it's almost like you're supporting this new innovation. It's not like you're buying it off yourself. And we've already, we do have version 2, which is already shipping, but our advice is we're phasing that out, because now version 3, we're focusing on that, because like I said, it's it's much better, it's easier to pump, it's got a pressure booster inside, an energy recovery device, and it produces over 8 liters, while version 2 you can get to around 6 liters, but also depends also on the salinity of the water, the temperature, and sometimes how fast you're pumping.
Yeah. And that brings me to another question. The membranes and the filters used for the version you're phasing out, are they the same for?
They are literally the same. The pre-filters are literally the same, but the aura membranes are a little bit different. So version 3 would require its own special membrane. But but again, still, I stress, it is it literally the same, but there's a small difference that you wouldn't. You'd still need to purchase the membranes for it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but I'll be sure to. This podcast episode goes up next week, so I'll publish the link in the show notes, and also on YouTube. But this is so interesting. Let's check offline, and maybe we can find the what was TD? What did you say?
TDS. Sorry, total
TDS.
Dissolved solids. Yeah. I'm sure I've looked at, because I remember someone asking this, but I don't know TDS level bulk. Is it Baltic? Yeah, Baltic Sea. Yeah. I think there has to be, they'll yeah, I don't know, it might be 30. It might be quite high, actually. Salinity, dynamics, TDS level about the chart. Yeah, I can send that to you. If I find it, but I think it's probably around the 20,000. But I need to kind of cross check. There must be some research papers out there.
Yeah, because it would be good to know because the Baltic Sea is not outside my window, but basically, so it's a good place to try it out if it's feasible if it works.
Yeah, the Baltic has low salinity or is brackish compared to the ocean. The average salinity of the surface of the Baltic is around 7 grams of salt. So maybe that's 7,000, I think. per kilowatt, while the ocean average is, yeah. So I think maybe you're around seven. I mean, here it says 7,000. So it would still, like I said, it worked, but you've got to have a TDS pen to make sure that, yeah. So 7,000 is considered brackish water.
Okay.
That's the one I have now, but I'll need to confirm that because it depends on where, Baltic Ocean, where you are may be different also from another place. Depending on
depends on where.
The water. If you're very close to the actual main ocean, then obviously the salinity level is going to be higher. Yeah.
But we have our listeners on the West Coast where that's a completely other ocean.
Yeah. Yeah. That's probably quite a higher salinity rate. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think we actually managed to walk through all the things that I have been interested in. So, Lee, maybe you have something that I forgot to ask. Well, I don't know. Is there anything more you would like to say?
It's great. No, we appreciate chatting with you, and we appreciate all the support we can get. Because we're still kind of like relatively small, and trying to do some major things in terms of the global transition, and also with Quenchsea. So. Yeah, fantastic. We're getting the word out there, and we do have like a large community already behind us, but and it's growing. So yeah, keep an eye out. I mean, please follow us on Instagram, on our socials to find out all the exciting stuff that we're working on.
Yeah, and for Swedish people wanting to buy your products, is the only way on your website, or do you have a reseller?
Yeah, it's ultimately it's the website, but it's best. What we're trying to promote at the moment is not the website, but the version 3, which is really Kickstarter, which we'll find a way to share that with the community.
And it's just a couple of months, so.
Yeah, it's a couple of months. Hopefully it's worth the wait. Yeah, I mean the risks obviously associated with Kickstarter or Indiegogo campaigns, but we have we've launched one in 2020 and we delivered on that, and now this is the second one that we're doing, and we have kind of launched the product already. So even on the page, you'll see that real samples of version 2, us working with it, the manufacturing facility that in China. So yeah.
Yeah, I saw a lot of positive comments. So
great, brilliant.
So, do you have a couple of minutes more? Or because one thing I always forget, because we have this question we ask all the guests in our podcast, and it would be so interesting to hear your take on this. So, this is your personal preparedness scale. It goes from 1 to 10.
Yeah.
If you're a 1, you get all your food delivered to your door, and you don't have anything in the freezer or the fridge. If you're 4, you can manage without any help from the society. You can be all by yourself and survive for for a week. Not survive, but you can manage during a week. And if you're 10, you're totally off grid. You don't need any help whatsoever from the society. So where would you put yourself?
That's a very good question. I've been concerned about, because I just feel like what we're doing, especially and I'm ashamed, and Sweden's in that ball as well, to be fair. But I think right now we are, from my understanding and from just a few things, that I only get my news and stuff off Twitter. I don't really go even to mainstream media anymore, because I think it's a lot. There's so much misinformation from their side. And I think like right now we are very close to nuclear war compared to any time in history. I mean, I know we're very close in, I think, was it the mid 80s or early 80s? But right now, I just think what they're doing with Russia, it's a proxy war. And I've been thinking about, okay, what do you do? Because there's a book I wanted to read. I think was it something. She talks about what happens when a nuclear war takes off. They say literally you've got 72 hours to really be prepared. And hopefully you're not living in one of the main urban centers, because they're probably going to be obliterated. But I have been thinking about it. And I mean, in terms of my preparedness, I'm not massive, but I have thinking about it in terms of, okay, just, buying a bit of, extra pasta. I mean, it doesn't make, but it's saying, and then knowing if something does happen, filling up your bathtub immediately, just to make sure that you do have access to water. So right now I'd say maybe around the 2-3. I don't think I'm above that, but I feel like I would want to do a little bit more, because I feel like you should be prepared. I feel there's something in the air, and I spend a lot of time and live actually in Dubai. Again, it's what's happening in that region. You really need to be factoring in, overnight it could completely change. So yeah, I'd like to be a bit more prepared, and I have been reading a little, because now a lot of our customers are preppers. I felt like, okay, I think this is a good idea to, have a kit, one of these, I think they call them bug out bags. What do they call them? Bags?
Bug out bags.
Bug out bags, yeah. To have, a few things in there just in case. So yeah, I would probably like to be around, 5 or 6 or even 7. Yeah. And ideally, I'd be nice to be completely off the grid and, being able to survive in the wilderness. I think that would be amazing to do that. But it's difficult because you live in a society where you have to rely on supply chains. I mean, in order for, we take it for granted, but in order, for example, if you just look at flour, to get to your table and to get it to be bread in front of your table, it goes through so many different intermediaries. Like, if you think about it, it's like, this is amazing that in order to get this, but look at how many people have been involved in that process. So I think it's very difficult to completely, I'm sure it can be done, but if you think of all these luxuries in life, we do take them for granted. So I would definitely like to be more. And I was speaking to my other half, and I was like, we need to be a bit more prepared in case something does happen. But
I think you're on a good. You've started the mindset. That's the most important thing. And then what you said about buying some extra pasta, just keep on doing that, but do it every week, and then you'll have a stock in a couple of months.
He's probably trying to find the space. Yeah, he's finding this space. But but I will definitely do. I think I will. And I like my little spices, so I was like, make sure, okay, you stocked up with your little spice boxes.
Yeah, and they are easy to prep.
I've traveled quite a bit, so I do kind of. I realized I had to travel one time down the Sahara. So I was in, from Spain going down into Morocco, and then the Western Sahara, and then Mauritania to Senegal. So so I do kind of appreciate having that, being kind of prepared for this survival stuff.
Good to hear. Looking forward to your progress report. I'm just kidding. No, but keep on prepping, because as you said, these are turbulent times, and you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. So it's good to be a bit prepared.
True.
Thank you. Well, Lee, thank you very much for taking your time off your schedule and talk to me today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, and let's stay in touch, and we'll check out for the
TDS.
I'm sorry. Okay, but take care. And so happy to have you here.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much, Martin. Take care.
Thank you. Och till er som lyssnar, sköt om er, preppa lugnt och glöm inte vattnet. Hej då!